Colonel de Haas, you are a researcher at the Netherlands Institute of International Relations Klingendaal, based in The Hague. You regularly publish in the Russian media either opinion articles or factual descriptions of events. Could you first explain how you got to be someone who is invited by Russian media to give his opinion about Russian security affairs?
Well, that's rather easy. When you publish a lot about Russian security, they also read it. And then you get approached also by Russian media, either to write opinion articles or being interviewed.
But wouldn't they think, from a Russian perspective, well, what would a researcher from a very small country like the Netherlands, what could he contribute to the thinking about defense, security, what have you?
Well, I don't think it's important from which country I come from, but the knowledge I have, whether I am here in the Netherlands or somewhere else.
And how did you build up that knowledge?
By studying Russia, by doing a study of Soviet studies at the time, and by writing books, by having a PhD thesis on Russian security.
And you also speak and write Russian?
Yes, I do.
You do. The new Russian military doctrine was published earlier this month. Could you give some of its key highlights?
Well, what's not so interesting is a prolongation of dangers, as they now call them, not threats anymore, of the West. Mentioning NATO, mentioning the United States with a missile shield, and also that the European security architecture has Cold War vestiges in it. That has been so in the past with earlier editions of the military doctrine, but that is prolonged. Which is a pity, because President Obama of the United States, as well as NATO Secretary General Rasmussen, have made attempts for appeasement last autumn. And well, this is an answer which you would not expect.
As far as this is concerned, would you say that Russia is still very much thinking in old-fashioned Cold War terms?
Well, yes, to a certain extent. There is still a part of the security elite which is still thinking in, let's say, the old large-scale warfare thing of NATO Warsaw Pact. Though another part of the security elite is well aware of modern warfare, as we, NATO, conduct, or the West conducts in Iraq and Afghanistan. And they have a hard time in combining these concepts, or rather to put away the old Cold War aspects and to go on with, let's say, the Western way of warfare.
One of the issues in the new doctrine is also to protect Russian citizens in the near abroad, in neighboring countries. Isn't that a very dangerous notion, that you as a nation claim a sort of ownership on people who are basically Russian but living in another neighboring country, that you see them as yours?
I would say that we already have seen proof of this well, it's not new thinking. Actually, the protection of Russian minorities abroad, in the near abroad, has been a constant factor in Russian security documents. However, in the Georgian conflict of 2008, for the first time, they have actually conducted warfare to do so with South Ossetians, which received Russian passports. Now, it's in the doctrine, and that has caused alarm in NATO, especially the Baltic states that have large Russian minorities. And that has also been a reason for NATO to look closer to its Article 5 military assistance article.
What exactly is the Article 5?
The Article 5 means that when one nation is attacked of NATO, then all other nations will come in support.
With countries like Estonia having, I believe, something like 40% population of ethnic Russians, you could have huge problems.
Yes, well, and that again, that is why especially the Baltic states are very worried by this. But the only thing that is a reassurance for them is that they are in NATO. As for instance, one of the Baltic ambassadors has said right after the Georgian conflict, we are in NATO, so you, the Netherlands, will defend us when we are attacked by Russia to protect a Russian minority.
In your view, could Could there be any sort of a new rapprochement between Russia and Western Europe in general, the Netherlands in particular? Are there any concrete things you and your colleagues could do to change the way of thinking in Russia, or is Russia simply too big for that?
No, I think we are sort of destined to increase cooperation with Russia. Because if we only blame Russia for this sort of Cold War thinking, they will radicalize even more and go towards countries like Iran, Venezuela. So what we should do is intensify cooperation, which can be political or civilian or military cooperation, in aspects that are of mutual benefit. And for instance, that is the case with Afghanistan. Russia knows quite well if we, NATO, loses the war in Afghanistan, that they have to solve the problem with Taliban and narcotics and all that. So therefore, they have opened their gate for transit of goods of NATO towards Afghanistan. And there are more of these kind of subjects. So let's say low-level, non-political sensitive ways of cooperation, and this is what we really should intensify.
But again, my question, can you and your colleagues from smaller European nations really influence Russian thinking?
Influence, well, invite them, show what we can do together, and in the end, but this might be an ideal, you can influence the political strategic level as well, but it will take time.